Welcome to the Training on Ministry Partnership. Over the next couple of sessions, we're going to be looking at what ministry partnership is and discussing some of the principles and some of the theology and really encouraging you and training you and equipping you to develop sustainable support in the ministry field. My wife and I have been on ministry partnership now for over 20 years. We started out in campus ministries on UCT many years ago, and have been fully supported through ministry partnership for the last 2 decades. We have 4 boys, and I want to encourage you with this. We have found ministry partnership to be such a privilege. It is such an honor to be able to be sustained in the ministry through teams of people who contribute to us monthly and who've built relationships with us over the years. And I'm hoping that over the next couple of sessions, we'll be able to share our heart with you. You'll be able to catch the heart behind the privilege of what it means to be on ministry partnership and be able to develop some of the tools and just look at some of the principles of what it takes to build sustainable support in ministry. I've often been asked by individuals that if I were offered a salary from the ministry, would I take it and step off ministry partnership? And the answer is no. And I will say this, Every Nation has been incredibly generous and incredibly kind to us as a family and have offered us a salary on multiple occasions over the last 20 years. And we've chosen to stay on ministry partnership simply because it is a real honor. It's a real privilege to be on a program like this. I was sharing with one of my partners literally about 2 months ago. He called me and he joined our team about many years ago, but about 17 years ago he joined our team. And I said to him when he called me 2 months ago, because he called me on the day of his son's birthday, he was turning 13 on the day he called me, and I shared with him that 13 years ago on the day his son was born, we actually prayed for him on the phone, and he'd been on our team at that point for about 5 years at that point. And I shared with him the prayer that we prayed with him that day that his son was born, and here he is still on our team on the day of his son's 13th birthday. And that just summarizes just the beauty of being on ministry partnership. There's these incredible relationships that we've formed with people over the years who have really bought into the vision that Christ has called us to the nations. And these relationships are so precious. And so I really do believe it's a privilege and an honor to be able to be supported in the ministry through something like this. So all I'm asking you is to come ready over the next sessions. Come ready to have your mind challenged, have your ideas challenged around what partnership is about. And I want to encourage you this. Remember God's called you to this. God's called you into this ministry assignment. And if He's called you, He's going to provide all the resources necessary to sustain you in this vision that He's called you to. And sometimes we need to think differently about God. Sometimes we need to change our mindset of who God is and to be able to think right about God. Thinking right about God is something every one of us is challenged with. If you're anything like me, I often, as I get to know God more and more, as I dig into the scriptures, you discover so often that some ideas you've held about God aren't who He is. And I want to give this quote. A.W. Tozer says it beautifully, and he says the following: "What comes into our minds when you think about God is the most important thing about us. Worship is pure or base as the worshipper entertains high or low thoughts of God. For this reason, the gravest question before the church is always God Himself. And the most portentous fact about any man is not what he at any given time may say or do, but what he in his deep heart conceives God to be like." One of the challenges we all face is to ensure that we keep an elevated view of God, that we keep a lofty view of who God is at all times. And you see, so often we conjure up this image of who we think God is. We conjure up this idea of who we think God is out of our fallen hearts. And we hold that image out and we worship that image as God, only to discover that the image we hold of God isn't who He really is. And something we have to challenge ourselves with on a regular basis as believers is the picture we hold of God really who He is? I remember a moment about 10 or 11 years ago. I love riding, I love running, and I love spending a lot of time outdoors. And I was on Chapman's Peak, which is close to where I live. And I was had ridden up to the top of Chapman's Peak, and the sun was setting. And you know, when it's a sunset, you feel, if you're watching a beautiful sunset go down, you feel a sense of awe. You feel these emotions come out of you. We all know what it's like. You watch a beautiful sunset, and it feels beautiful. And I was watching the sunset, and it was a beautiful sunset on the top of Chapman's Peak. And the Lord spoke into my heart while I was up there, and He said to me, Andrew, you are marveling more right now at that sunset than you are when you do the Creator of the sunset. And I was really struck by this. I was really moved by this, that I look at a sunset and I hold more awe for the sunset, but when I look at God, my heart doesn't erupt with the same emotion and the same worship. And I was deeply challenged by this. And the principle there is that we often have to challenge our hearts about who we see God to be. If we keep a clear picture of who God is, worship will come out of our lives. Worship will erupt. God is beautiful and magnificent in every single aspect of His character. And part of this journey in ministry partnership is challenging our own hearts, who God is. Because when we see God for who He is, He's a provider. He will provide the resources necessary to sustain us in the ministry. It's like Peter when he stepped out of the boat. He had his eyes fixed on Jesus. He knew when he was getting out of the boat, he knew who it was who was calling him. And his eyes were fixed on Christ. And in the same way, when our eyes are fixed on God, we're going to have more courage and boldness to be able to step out of the boat, step into those ministry assignments with the confidence that God's going to provide for us. NASA recently released one of their new satellites into space, and it went out a few weeks ago, and they posted some of the pictures that the satellite released or took. And this picture you see on the screen really struck me when I was going through the pictures of this satellite. And it's a picture of, that picture you see there on the screen is a picture of thousands of galaxies, okay? And each one of those galaxies has millions of stars in. So every single dot you see on that picture has millions, is a galaxy, and each galaxy has millions of stars. And this is the quote NASA posted for this picture, and I'm just going to read it. This is from NASA. They said, "This picture represents this slice of the vast universe, covers a patch of sky approximately the size of a grain of sand held at arm's length by someone on the ground." So this picture you're looking at is a picture of hundreds of galaxies, and each galaxy has millions of stars, and that picture represents only a grain of sand held at arm's length. And yet Isaiah says God takes the span of His hand and He measures the entire universe. This God we serve is magnificent. He's huge, and we need to hold a lofty picture of who He is in our hearts at all times. This leads us onto a biblical discussion of ministry partnership. And throughout the next couple of sessions, different people are going to be sharing different theological perspectives of ministry partnership and giving a defense for ministry partnership from Scripture. And it's important that you have a conviction that ministry partnership is based in Scripture. And you're going to have to go and dig into the Scriptures. We're going to help you throughout this week and throughout the next couple of sessions. God's Word is living and powerful. It's able to change our hearts. And the more we spend time in the Word, the more we soak ourselves into the Word, that Word is going to paint a picture not only of who God is, but what He's called us to. So I encourage you to be students of the Scripture. Go to the Scriptures and make sure that you personally have a conviction of the biblical basis of what ministry partnership is. Years ago, when I was flying, I was on a plane from Cape Town to Joburg, and this was in the early years of our ministry, and the Lord used a passage out of Exodus to really challenge me and provoke me to really understand and accept that God is our provider. And we're going to unpack this in a lot more detail in another video, but it's the story of Moses, and it takes place in Exodus 33 to 36. And I'll just give you a quick summary because this was so precious to me, and it's been the anchor of my soul for so many years. But the story unfolds where God comes to Moses and asks Moses to build the tabernacle. And He gives Moses tremendous detail around what the tabernacle must look like and what it must be made of and the measurements. And you can go and read this in Exodus, and we'll cover this in more detail, as I said, in a later video. But God comes and shares with Moses the vision of the tabernacle in great detail. Then you see Moses going and sharing and translating that vision to the Israelites and sharing what God told him to the Israelites. And you then see an incredible response from the Israelites. They start bringing the gold and the silver and all the materials and the resources needed to actually put the tabernacle together. And then finally, you see Moses having to stand up, and the Bible says he had to restrain the people from giving, for what they had was too much. They had more than enough to build the tabernacle. And the principle for there was, God gave Moses a vision, just like he's given you a vision for what he's called you to do. Moses goes and shares that vision with the people, just like you're going to go and share that vision with a number of people and people who you feel are called to be a part of your partnership team. And then you see the Israelites bringing the resources to the point where Moses had to stop the people from bringing. And at the same time, you're going to see people starting to give generously to be able to support that mission that Christ has called you to do. I mean, I look forward to the day as a pastor we can stand up in our pulpits and actually say to the congregation, stop giving, we've got too much. But that's the nature of our God. He is more than a provider, and he will provide for the vision to which he's called you to. And I want to encourage you to have that conviction, to dig into the scriptures, develop that conviction that God will provide for what he's called you to. God will also give in very unexpected ways. I want to share this story. This was quite an emotional story that happened in the early years, and God really used this moment to really challenge the pride and the insecurity of my own heart. I got a call from a lady. This happened years ago. We were on UCT, campus pastors on UCT, and she phoned and she said, I hear you guys are the campus pastors in UCT. She'd love to partner with us. Would I mind coming and sharing our presentation? So, when someone calls you and asks you to go and share the presentation because they want to give you, you need to say yes to it. That's an easy presentation. At least that's what I thought. And so I was like, yeah, let me come share with you. I didn't know what I was getting into, and God really set me up beautifully this evening. And I arrived at her house. Me and my wife arrived in our car, and I immediately realized this wasn't what I was expecting. My car was more valuable than her house. And I came into the house, and there were 5 people living in the house. It was the lady who called me. It was her mom, her daughter, her brain-damaged or invalid son, and the nurse that was looking after the son. And I immediately felt quite awkward by what was happening. And we went into the lounge, we had tea, she prepared some tea and cake for us, and we were sitting there sharing the presentation. And I had resolved in my heart, I'm not going to ask. I can't do an ask here. I can't ask for money. And we did the presentation, prayed for them, and we were getting ready to leave, and the lady said to me, but we want to give to this. We want to support you financially. So I, with reluctance in my heart, did the ask and shared how she can give, and she came on for a 200 Rand debit order. And I was feeling quite guilty at this moment. Signed up, we filled out all the paperwork, and we were packing up, and then her and her mom started talking in their own language. I didn't understand what they were saying, and they were just conversing. And then the lady said to me, my mom has been looking at the pictures of your presentation, and she wants to partner. At which point I said to them, well, why don't we just take your partnership as partnership for the family rather than taking extra? And they wouldn't take no for an answer. And eventually her mom signed up as well. So we're packing up, and it's not over yet, and we're walking out towards our car to leave, and then the lady calls me back. So I go back into the home, and she said the nurse was listening to the presentation from the kitchen, and she wants to partner. Eventually she signed up, and I got into the car to go home, and the Lord spoke to me. He said, Andrew, don't you ever decide who is and who isn't going to support you. That's my call. That's my decision. And I realized that day, God's going to support you through his ways, and we've just got to surrender to him. But don't say yes or no for people. Let God lead you to the people, and let him make the decision as to who joins you in your partnership team. This leads to an important discussion around the Great Commission. We all know the famous passage, Matthew 28:19, therefore go make disciples of all nations, teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. And this is an important passage for us, because that commission that Jesus gave was to all believers. It wasn't just to full-time vocational missionaries, it was to everyone. And this is an important passage that all believers are called to be a part of the Great Commission. Now, it's going to take different forms. It's going to look differently for some people. Some people are called to pray for missions. Some people are called to go on missions. Not everyone's going to be called to go to university campuses or go to another nation, but we're all called to be a part of the Great Commission. Some will give, some will pray, some will go, but we're all called to give. And so ministry partnership exists in the context of this Great Commission. Christ has called us all to be a part of this Great Commission. And you might be called to go on the campus. And part of this journey is discovering who the people that God has called to be a part of your team to support you financially in the mission field. Some people are called to give. Some people are called to go. And so this is an important aspect of ministry partnership, that it doesn't exist in and of itself. It exists in the context of the Great Commission. I want to encourage you. This is such a privilege. Just think about this for a moment. You're called to this mission that Christ has called you, and you're going to have 30, 40, 50 people joining you, praying for you, supporting you. I mean, what an honor, what a privilege. You're going to, over time, get to know these individuals. And it really is a privilege to be able to be on a program like this. And let me just say this as well. It's important. We're part of a movement that is a sending movement. I mean, every nation is all about reaching the nations. It's about going to the nations, go to the campuses, go to the nations. But if we can't stay once we've gone, we're not going to make the difference we're called to make. And part of building sustainable support, and you're going to hear this come through in a couple of the other videos, but it's no good that we go, but we can't stay. We need to have our finances in place. We need to be able to sustain ourselves in the ministry field, in the mission field, so that once we've gone, we can stay and continue to minister and make disciples and raise leaders. So let's talk about a couple of principles around ministry partnership. I've often said there is a big difference between partnership and donations. There is a significant difference by that. With donations, the basis of the relationship with donors is the money they give. Okay, so this is one of the big distinctions. Donors, the basis of the relationship is the 200 or the 300 rand they give you. Partnership is different. Partnership, the basis of the relationship is the mission to which Christ has called you. So with partners, they have bought into the mission and the vision to transform Africa or Europe or whatever it is that you're called to, but they've knitted their hearts with the mission that Christ has called you. The byproduct of that is the 200 or the 300 rand they give you. I wouldn't raise my family on a team of donors. It's just not long-term and it's not sustainable. But a team of partners, I will raise my family on. A great example, a young lady at Baxter many years when we were still on UCT, she was partnering with us, and she lost her job. She was retrenched and she had to go back to live with her family in Pretoria. And I met her one morning just before the service on Sunday. And I said to her, I need you to stop your partnership. I need you to take care of your family. And she said to me something interesting. She said, Andrew, my partnership with you is the last amount that's going to come off my budget. That's the last bit of money. That's the last budget item I'm going to take off my budget. And there was an example of someone who'd really, her heart had been touched by this mission to reach university students, and that mission had been ignited in her heart. So raising funds is easy. Building partnership is what's hard. You can raise funds quite quickly. All you've got to have is a cause worthy enough to give to, and you've just got to eloquently share the vision of that cause, and people will give money to it. You can hit your target very easy. But building partnership is a lot harder. I've often said ministry partnership isn't hard. It's very hard. It's like pushing a car up a hill. If you pushed a car up a hill and you put your back into the car and you're pushing up a hill, it's hard to develop that partnership team. It's hard to help people transition from being donors to being partners. But once you get to the top of the hill and you're going down the other end, then it's easy. Once people have transitioned into being a part of the mission to which Christ has called you, ministry partnership becomes a lot easier. But building that initial partnership team is hard. It can take 1 year to 2 years to actually build that partnership team, whereas just raising funds is quite easy. You can do that in 6 to 7 months. I'm asking you to open up your heart to some of these things, to be challenged in your ideas, and to challenge your own heart and mindset around what ministry partnership is. It's a ministry to a team of people who have bought into the vision to which Christ has called you to. It's not just simply fundraising or donations management. And I'm appealing to you to challenge your own mindset and your own heart around what partnership is during the course of these next sessions. On top of that, you're contending for the next generation. There's a generation of young leaders coming up behind you that are going to be looking at how you live your life, how you live out your ministry, and how you engage in ministry partnership and how you steward that partnership. This next generation is looking at you and they're watching you, and they're going to do what you do. And so we are contending for that next generation as well. Next is maintaining the right attitude towards your ministry partnership. You're here in the training for varying reasons. Some of you might be here because your pastor has told you to come here. Some of you here is you have no money, and so you're coming to figure out how you can actually raise the support to keep yourself in the ministry. Maybe here because you really love partnership, or you've heard about how amazing it is and you actually want to engage and go through a journey like that. Whatever the reason is, maintain a right attitude around partnership. Don't come in with a begrudging mindset. Remember, it's God who's called you. He will provide you. You're representing Him. God is bigger than your circumstances or backgrounds. We've seen people succeed at ministry partnership from all walks of life, all backgrounds, all cultures. And it's God who calls you, and it's Him that's going to provide for you. Just think about this for a moment. Consider the blessing of having 30 or 40 people with you in the ministry who are praying for you, supporting you, who are building a relationship with you. It's an incredible privilege, and it's an incredible honor. So avoid the temptation of feeling sorry for yourself. Remember who it is that's called you to this incredible ministry. On to support coaching. It's important that in all aspects of our lives, we have people walking alongside us, discipling us. So one of the videos we are going to talk in detail about is having a coach in your life. So I won't mention much about that here, but we are going to touch on it just to say we've got a team of incredible coaches all over the country here to support you. And we are going to really encourage you to be a part of these forums, and having someone who's going to be walking with you, coaching you, and journeying with you as you develop your ministry partnership. Another big component of the sessions coming up is all the practicals. We're going to look at the practical skills needed to develop a team of ministry partnerships. We're going to be looking at how to make a phone call and set up an appointment. We're then going to take time in unpacking how do you actually build a presentation. How do you share the vision of what Christ has called you to someone who is potentially going to partner with you. We look at some of the administrative aspects. So if someone says yes, they want to partner with you, what do you do from that? We're going to be having a session on how do you read your reports? How do you handle responses when someone says yes or no to you? We're going to be looking at group presentations. So we're going to be, over the next couple of sessions, looking at some of the practical aspects of ministry partnership, equipping you with the needed skills to be able to succeed at building long-term sustainable support. One of my favorite sessions of the week is the session on partner care. And it deals with how to practically build long-term relationships with your partners, how to help your partners from being donors to becoming partners. We're going to take a good amount of time talking about some strategies and really talking about the heart that you need to have towards your partners, and not seeing them just as a 200 Rand donation, but seeing them as a vital part of your team and a member of your team as you call to the vision to which Christ has called you. Remember, it's no good if we go to the nations but we can't stay there because our finances run up. I remember one of my partners who's on my team, he joined our team for an interesting reason. He was actually partnering with another missionary from another movement, and he was giving to that missionary. And then one of my other partners, they're friends, and they were at a braai the one day, and the one individual went to the fridge and he saw one of my newsletters on his friend's, on the fridge of his friend, and he went to him and asked him about it. And one of the guys who was partnering with him started telling him about what we're doing in the ministry. And he phones me out of the blue and he says, I was just at my friend's house. He was telling me about what you're doing. I would like to partner with you. I'd like to support you. And the reason he gave was, he told me he was supporting some other missionaries, but he'd never heard from them. He had no idea what they were doing. He got a call from them once a year, and he felt that he just wanted to be a part of our team after he heard how my partner was sharing about what we did with them and how we involved them in the ministry. That's a good example of if you get your partner care right and you treat your partners as vital members of your mission team, it can really open up incredible doors for you. And through your partners, God will provide increasingly amounts for you. So we're going to talk about that in one of the sessions on partner care. In conclusion to this video, just remember, ministry partnership is a ministry. It's a ministry to a team of incredible people that God has added to your vital missions team to see the vision that He's called you fulfilled. And remember, it's a journey. It's a journey you're on. It's a journey they're on. And you are going to be amazed at what God does in and through you. Remember, it's Him who calls you. And He will provide all the necessary resources to execute the vision to which He's called you. And He's added incredible men and women to your team to help see that dream come true.